And it's certainly the case in music. And then you can extend that to talk about tension not just being something that is a dissonance that has to resolve now, or a dissonance that's delayed and resolves then. You can talk about larger scale dissonance, and you can get into things like sonata form. You don't even have to call it sonata form. You can just talk about large architectural forms that have an innate tension in them. Like sonata form, you've got a theme. You can start talking, we've got a melody. And now we've got this melody in another key. And it's a whole different kind. This melody was kind of marching along, and this one's lyrical. So they're completely different. But not only are they different in style, but this melody's in another key. And then what does the composer do? Does he resolve it and go back to the home? No. What does the composer do? They go into a development section, and they leave that thing unresolved in the exposition. And that's a large-scale tension. And the two themes are doing whatever they do in development sections. They're on top of each other. You're looking at them. You're comparing them, contrasting. You're doing one backwards. You're doing a little fragment of one with the other. And all of this stuff happens. And then what happens in the end? Those themes come back again. The main theme in the home key. And then the second theme also in the home key. Finally resolved. So that's one of these large-scale tensions that happens. And so you can make the comparison with kids between local and global tension. It's fun to do that. Now, another thing you can do, you could just write a piece, have this class write a piece, and let's say we restrict it to only sounds you can make with your body, your mouth, your feet, no instruments, in other words. And you could just start going around the room and getting ideas. Like, I'll take a volunteer. Give me some sounds that we're going to make. Somebody want to volunteer? Okay, duck quacks. All right. Yeah, because that's exactly what a kid's going to come up with.
We hope. Yeah.
All right. Something else. Okay, snapping fingers. Okay. What? Clapping hands.
I'm totally gonna quack.
All right, what else? Mouth sound? What do we call that? What else? Yeah. You know that one?
Water drops.
Yeah. Yeah, and then you can contribute one. You can say, okay, how about so if you contribute one. You know, something like that, and keep changing the dynamics. Another one could say, let's just read from a book, really quietly. So a bunch of people read from a book. And then you can divide that up, something like that. Okay, I've got room for one more part. Keep going. Let's finish this thing. What's that? Foot stomping. What else?
Humming.
Humming? Good. Hum. What else? Whistling? What else? Yeah. What's that?
TS.
TS. That's a little like shh, but okay.
That's more accent.
Okay, yeah.
That's a marcato.
But just keep doing it like. Oh no. Okay. Good. So let's do it. Since you're seated this way, let's do group one. This side, this column here. There. That's too many. There. Group two will be there. You're the middle column. Group three will be there. Now, I don't know if you can see it all. And then we'll proceed downward. So when I hold up my first finger, all of you do the first part. So you'll quack, you guys will clap, you guys will foot stomp. Then we'll go to part two. You'll snap, you'll pop, you'll hum. Then part three, you'll read softly from whatever's in front of you. And you'll do the okay.
Oh, that's right. We have to read.
All right, here we go. You ready?
Through the years.
The maestro is ready.
through the years, and when we make music, we combine our fruit. The feel of music is so much more important than thinking.
There you go. So then you could discuss it with the kids. Like the kids might say, wow, that section, I didn't like the quacking at all. Or they could talk, or they could say, I kind of like this part because I like the, I don't know, there was some, actually I like this part because it's this huge change from that shh. Yeah, this is the part I like. Yeah, with this guy, because we're hearing dynamics there. When that came in, just suddenly we had dynamics. We didn't have any dynamics here. And you could talk about, well, what made that interesting was the fact that it changed dynamics. Everything else was sort of the same dynamic. So you could talk about the importance of dynamics. Then you could do another piece instead of something like, you could do another piece where, okay, you're going to write a piece that is based on all the things you know about music except pitch. So there can be rhythm, there can be dynamics, but it's all going to be on a single pitch or a single non-pitch. You just take away something, and it forces them to think about these other aspects of music, other than pitches, because pitches are what intimidate, because pitches are linked to theory and harmony and all of that. And that's where people get scared and they get intimidated. So try to remove the intimidation. Okay. Yes, Bob?
Alex Shapiro has a piece on paper sounds called Paper Cut. And it's out there. Just Google Alex Shapiro, A-L-E-X Shapiro.
Great. Alex Shapiro, Paper Cut.
And she's a real composer. And it's
Yeah.
It's a pretty fascinating piece.
That's great. Yes?
Do you set aside specific time for composing, or is it kind of when the mood hits you? Or
No,
the deadline hits you?
it's for me, it's very routine. At USC, I'm very lucky. They don't work us too hard there. I teach Mondays and Wednesdays. And so I've got Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, and some time on the weekends to compose. What'd I say? Oh, are you a little jealous? Is that? Oh, good. Because I know you compose, right?
No, I transcribe.
Right.
No creativity.
Oh, okay. Well, so I just have a real routine that I'm in, and for me that's just what works for me. I don't do well when I have a day here and then I put it off and then I have another day there. It's like punching in a clock for me. It's like blue collar job, like doing the time. And students who come to me and say, and with this excuse that I just can't find it, they're usually hiding the simple fact that they're not doing just what I said. They're not punching in the clock and putting in the time. Inspiration doesn't come from sitting under trees and, this whole romantic notion. It comes from sitting at a desk and doing some hard work and having a bad day or a bad week, and that will eventually yield productivity. It really is the case. It's just exactly like an athlete. If you're a professional athlete, you have to stay in shape every day. If you take even a couple of days off, you get out of shape. But you get back in shape pretty quickly. But if you put off more than a couple of days, it gets harder to get back in shape. It's exactly the same as an athlete or performing. It's exactly the same as an instrument. Got to do it all the time. Other questions? Yes?
So I'm kind of curious what you think about the state of music in our country, like now, and the direction it's moving. Is it healthy, or are we in a real crisis?
Yeah, it's such a hard question because it's a question we have to keep addressing. Every generation has to keep coming back to that. And so I can remember asking it when I was just, I can remember it being asked from the very beginning of my musical career and every step along the way. And the same problems are always there. And yet here we all are because we have to make music. No matter how bad it may get or good it may seem, either way, there are people who are born and live to make music. They just have to do it. I was certainly one of those. I knew I had to do it. I had a rich uncle with no kids who said, Frank, I'm going to pay for all your college. This is a true story. I'm going to pay for all your college if you do pre-med or pre-law. And I said, sorry, Uncle Johnny, I've got it. This is what I've got to do. He says, okay, well, good luck, but I can't help you. So there's always that mentality that music is something, boy, it's going to make your life miserable. And people think of it as something over there, and people spend their whole lives not thinking about music. And that's always going to be the case. And there are going to be people who spend their whole lives thinking about music and making it. And those people thinking about it are always trying to figure out ways to get the ones who aren't involved in the game. And we've come up with really imaginative ways of doing it. Professional orchestras have done every kind of outreach to the Korean Americans and the Chinese Americans and the Hispanic Americans and African Americans and white Americans, everything. And young Americans, every possible subgroup you can think of. They go into their communities, they invite them into the concert halls. We're doing everything. And some things work, at least to some degree, and some things haven't worked, but we're always doing it. And I think we just have to keep doing just that. Now, to extend your question, music in the public schools, I'm really sad about that, especially where I live in California. It's just so awful right now in the public schools. California is ranked 50th of the 50 states in the ratio of music teachers to the number of students enrolled in schools in California. Now, what does that mean? You think about that. That doesn't mean we have fewer music teachers. It means the ratio is the smallest. That means that the music teachers in California, if you think about it, it just means they're overworked. It means that there's no high school band with an assistant. You've got a high school director who's also teaching the choir and also running over in his or her car to the junior high and maybe even to the elementary school and is burned out at the end of the day and has to do it again the next day. That's going on as well. I'm really sad to see that because the public schools were such an important part of my upbringing, as I shared with you. And now I've got kids, 13 and 9, and what do? I send them to private school because the public schools are so bad. And
but don't you think that's where we grow those concert hall people? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
so that's my question.
Sure, you educate people about music. You get it from an early age when the nervous system is still forming and music becomes part of that development. I think the earlier the better. I feel fortunate that I started music earlier than my Texas counterparts because they started in 6th grade. But I started in 4th grade. And I always wonder, maybe that's why my ears were better than those kids at my public school and better than the kids because I started just a little earlier when everything was still forming, or maybe it's just that life ain't fair and I got that gene. I don't know which, but I always wonder about that. And so the earlier the better as far as I'm concerned. It should be even earlier. And I don't have the answers to this, but I hear this I've heard this all my life. Bob's been around a lot longer than I, a lot longer. He's heard it all his life. So, do you have anything to say about it, Bob?
Well, everything you're saying is true, and everything you're concerned about is true, and it's always been true. I mean, we could have transported this back 40 years, and we'd be talking the same situation. Now, that on the upper end, which is where Frank and I are fortunate to deal, the students are better than ever.
That's true.
The players are better, the composers are better, everybody's better, and there's lots of them that are great. So you'd say if you only look at those people, you'd think there's no crisis. It's down there, where we get our hands dirty, where the crisis is.
Yeah.
Got more people, and I think you always have to be fighting the fight. And I've fought the fight my whole life. It's a different fight. But I fought the band fight.
You mean the wind band versus orchestral music? Or
Yeah, the wind band versus music.
Okay. Okay.
I mean, the worst possible thing you could be is a band director and saxophone player.
For a second.
You're an evangelist all the time, and there are things you can do, and you're not going to by yourself. I used to think by myself I was going to push bands and band music into the mainstream of serious concert music. And Yeah, I think I've done a little bit, I kind of nudged it. And there's a lot of other people who are nudging it, and if we all nudge it, it's gonna have an impact. And so band music is better now than it used to be. There's Frank Ticheli now, and Frank's not the only one. There are a lot of people out there that are writing significant music for our medium, and there didn't used to be. And it's all levels. I mean, what Larry Dane has done for simple band music is fantastic. Anyway,
Yeah, it's. I'll have you know, my 3 commissions from now, I'm writing a saxophone concerto. I don't want to make Bob feel uncomfortable, but it's one of the things I admire most about him. He spent his life taking a stand on this. And I just really admire what you've done. And so many people who've come afterwards share that admiration. And so many of your students have done so well to carry this on. I'm talking about the next generation of people like Jerry Junkin and so many others. Yes?
So with the higher level achieving that you see at the upper levels, we're really not losing as long as we continue to fight. You know, as long as we keep at it, yeah, it's dismal. There are days, there are weeks, there are years that you just can't even stand to look at. Oh my God, I got to deal with these guys this year.
Yeah.
But as long as we keep pushing that way, they're end up better when they get to you, or more talented by the time they get up to your level. Something must not be wrong. I mean,
Right.
as long as we keep going after it.
Yeah, the talent still has to come forth. It's not always coming from America, by the way. I mean, a lot of the talent we see is coming from other countries. We still have to make sure our country is teaching kids about beauty and music from an early age. Yeah.
we're not doing so bad if on a Saturday in January, this many people are showing up to a conducting lecture.
Right. That's true.
Playoff dedicated.
Very true. Let's go 1, 2, 3.
So, just speaking about, the state of music education in America, it makes me think that we've been talking this entire time about all this creativity and everything like that, and I only do beginning band. That's my full-time job, 6 classes a day, beginning band. And I sit there, and at the beginning of the year, I took my job, and we open up our book to line number 1, the most creative of all tunes, the long tone. And once we got done with line number 1, we go to line number 2, and all these kids that are rip-roaring, ready to go on their instruments are now doing line number 2, quarter notes. And it's weird talking about this creativity and how you're like, yeah, I felt it all along, and it makes me wonder, are we doing a good job of teaching this creativity? Because you think about, when does a kid actually get a chance to take their instrument and create something with it? Well, they don't get to it in the beginning of the class, but we have to do line number 1. And then when they actually get a chance to create, it's like in jazz band, and then it's only if we have time before school in jazz band while we're not putting on a concert. And do you feel like kind of the way we're approaching music is, I don't want to say hurting us, but it's kind of pulling us back. And even in my classes, I have students that showed up with their trombone, and they're ready to go, and they're ready to make noise, and then they can't. They don't get to. And then they go home and they have homework and they have just enough time to practice for class the next day. And you feel like kind of that way we're stifling a little, but
Well, I
because
have 2 thoughts about this. My first initial thought is, it sounds like you need a better method book.
yeah, well,
I mean, if you're not happy,
in
because
general the entire world does, but
yeah.
besides that,
But there are many of them out there, and some of them, and I know some are better than others, and some of them they're getting more imaginative. But the other thing is, I hear this a lot, and that I just don't have time. We've got to do this and this. There's really no time to add the creative side to it. I hear that a lot as well, and a lot of the people who are talking about that are addressing it in really interesting ways. There are now. I don't know how many of you are doing doctoral degree or plan on doing a doctorate. How many of you are thinking about going back to grad school, master's or doctorate? So your thesis, you could make this part of your thesis on the subject of teaching creativity to young kids. That will help contribute ideas to each other on how to do this. I mean, what I just did is just, well, it's just a drop in the bucket, of course. But you start multiplying that times all the other minds here who come up with their ways of doing it. That didn't take us, what did that take us? 4 minutes? That didn't take up that much time. And then you can get right back to those quarter notes. And if you share ideas in the form of written scholarship and just word of mouth, you have the power to suddenly introduce creativity in amazing ways that you haven't thought of before, just by sharing your own ideas. So you guys can do that. You, I don't mean just you, I mean us. I mean everybody, the big collective you. All of us can contribute to that if we just do it, if we just start doing the work that we need to do. Sit down and think about it.
It's because I was talking to the guy that I feed into and the other teachers in my district, and I was like, so what's our and this was a bad way of me to ask the question at the time, but I asked them, and I was like, so what's our retention rate in the district between 6th and 7th grade? And they're like, right now we're somewhere between 60 and 70%. I was like, how are we losing 30% of our kids? And then I look at the kids right now that I've changed the way I've been teaching, and since I started looking at this, but the kids that were ready to drop were the kids who showed up the most excited the first day, because all they wanted to do was play. And then, but we can't play. We have a message board. We got a goal, and then it's been weird watching them like change the way that they're thinking now. That, well, let's do this little 5-note improv exercise as part of our warm up, and seeing how they get this chance to actually
Improv,
create.
yeah.
Sure. And they get a chance to create on their instrument, and I even did something simple like, well, at the beginning of class, instead of let's all play first time all together, I'll just take 5 minutes, do something on your own. Have some fun with your instrument, and then we'll come together.
Yeah.
Make sure it's working, and then all of a sudden all my classroom management problems went out of the way. These kids finally got to create something. And it just makes me feel weird to think that I have this book from a publishing company, and it's telling me to do this, and it's killing the kids.
Just don't let the book rule you. You're in charge of that. And man, if I were in that situation and I just sense that okay, we don't need to do this, let's go to page 18 and do that, then I would go to page 18 and do that. I'd skip page 4, whatever it takes. Yeah. And the attrition, I mean, I don't want to get too much into attrition. We have to. Attrition is a natural part of it. We all have that. But what would concern me is that the really excited ones drop out. You want to keep those, the ones who are excited about it. Yeah, are we done?
Yeah, great
we are
session.
done.
We're going to continue this after lunch.
Okay, yeah, we'll continue with Bob.
Yeah, we've got to switch over the set for the